Lately, I've been thinking about the meaning of duty, about having a sense of duty, what it's like to go above and beyond the call of duty, to be dedicated to a mission beyond yourself, for the greater good, for a cause that could change the world. This was me in Virginia Beach, just outside Norfolk, Virginia. The reason why I was in Norfolk was because it is the home of the largest naval station complex in the entire world. I mean, what better place to contemplate the meaning of duty than in a place where people lead their lives fulfilling it? It's massive, massive. Just before this trip, I had learned that a U.S. Navy warship was going to be named after a Filipino-American hero for the first time ever. And so I felt I had the duty to learn more. As you can imagine, this is a huge history-making accomplishment for the Filipino community. The naming of this ship recognizes the importance of Filipinos in the shaping of U.S. American history. Telesforo Trinidad is one of those Filipinos who joined the U.S. Navy in 1910. Soon after enlisting, he became the only Filipino to receive the Navy Medal of Honor for running into a blazing fire, not just once, but twice, to save the lives of his comrades. When I decided to learn more about the Navy destroyer that would be known as the USS Telesforo Trinidad, I had no clue I would end up meeting some of the highest-ranking Filipino Americans to serve in the U.S. military. From them, I learned that duty, when chosen, becomes something powerful that drives you beyond any sense of obligation. Going back to Virginia Beach, my journey to learn about Telesforo Trinidad started when I met U.S. Navy veteran Lee Parilla.
Let's make it professional.
Lee is a retired Chief Petty Officer from Leyte, Philippines, who enlisted in the U.S. Navy in the 1970s. He was instrumental in helping garner support for the campaign to have a ship named after Telesforo Trinidad back in 2021. You joined the Navy in, what was it, 75?
Yeah, 1975, right after the Vietnam War.
I know very little about the military, so this is all new to me.
Yeah.
When did you retire?
June 30, 1997.
So how many years was that?
22 years, 2 months, 17 days. The recruitment in the Philippines ceased 1991. That's why when Dan Gruta called me about first Filipino to be named the ship. So I was so excited, hey, I want to be part of it. And he knows that I know a lot of people. So I've been involved in the campaign.
How did you get involved? Did you help to connect people?
We always have this Filipino gatherings, like a petition.
Yes.
Yeah. And we sign the petition, we send it to our congressman. That's how I get involved. We try to get the people aware.
Are they building a new ship for this name, or is it already built and then they just happen to say, okay, that ship we're going to name?
No, you're going to build a ship.
So they're actually going to build a whole new ship for this, this namesake.
Before we get this name, there was already a plan, because this is already a plan. The Navy already has a plan
to build a ship.
Okay. But at the time, we don't know what's the name of that yet. In other words, we don't actually separately build a ship just for that name.
Correct.
The ship is already in
motion to be built.
In motion, yeah.
Got it. And then they're like, oh, we have a ship.
Okay.
What are we going to name it? And then that's when the petitions come in.
Petitions come in, yeah. I'm very proud because, like I said, this is the first ship
named after a
Filipino.
So who was the person who actually led that campaign? Was it the guy in San Diego?
Dan Gruta. Yeah.
Dan Gruta. Okay. Yeah. And he's a Filipino who just really wanted to have this name.
Yeah. And he speak the guy actually from the Philippines. He was captain. Not too many people got to that.
He's a captain.
Captain in the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah, which is in the Army, it's a colonel.
I'd really like to meet him.
You haven't met him yet?
No, I haven't.
I thought Dan Gruta told you about me.
This surprising twist at the end of my conversation with Lee led me to San Diego, California, where I met retired U.S. Navy Captain Dan Gruta.
This is where I said in the last interview.
Now providing major support to the commissioning of the USS Telesforo Trinidad, Dan gave me a bit of background regarding the relationship between the Philippines and the U.S. military. He also helped me understand what the naming of the ship means to those who made tremendous sacrifices in fulfilling their military duties for the country they love. I found it so fascinating to learn the long-ish history that we have between the U.S. and the Philippines and the military. I had no idea.
From 1901 to 1990, Filipinos were recruited from the Philippines into U.S. Armed Services from one treaty or another. Philippines was the only foreign country the U.S. ever occupied and actually governed. I come from a Navy family. My dad's a retired chief, uncle's a retired master chief. I have a senior chief and a chief on the mother's side of the family. One of the things that my dad's friends said, you know, we sacrificed a lot for us to come to the United States to do what we did in the U.S. Navy and the U.S. military. Now, you're the generation we brought into this country. It would really give us a sense of fulfillment. I'm paraphrasing right here. If you did something and got something better than we did. So that was, a sense of duty that I had going through Annapolis. Hey, I got to succeed right here. There is that sense of purpose for our culture. What we did for Telesforo Trinidad actually is the victory of the sacrifices you made. Because a lot of you guys gave up those barcadas back in the Philippines, your friends, you didn't see family for a long time.
Is that a part of what drew you to that campaign and that cause, was to forward something that was missing as a part of our legacy as a community, as a part of the Asian American story, as a part of the Filipino story as well, and their presence in the military?
The naming of the ship after Telesforo Trinidad is America delivering its promise, because Telesforo Trinidad, hey, another foreign guy on the ship, but you know what? He saved his shipmates just like they were his own brothers. And I think that's the power of America, is to fight for something higher than yourself. And that's why I think the name of the ship, USS Telesforo Trinidad, is America delivering its promise, not only to Filipinos, but for all that yearn for the American way of life and for the American success story. Just like anything good, this is not something I applied for. I'm going to start.
Wait, you fell into it by accident, or?
I got called by a friend. This happened during the pandemic, mind you. So,
really?
So actually...
Wait, so the whole campaign started during the pandemic?
Yes. Believe it or not, people kind of find it surprising that the Telesforo Trinidad campaign was started by a retired U.S. Air Force officer of Filipino descent.
Huh.
I say, Dan, I need some Navy people right here to kind of give me legitimacy.
The friend that Dan is referring to is retired Air Force Colonel Nonie Cabana. It'll just come to us naturally.
Yes, I like that.
Because you're a natural.
Oh, thank you.
Nonie is quite special, not only because he was the first person to initiate the naming of the USS Telesforo Trinidad, but also because his passion for sharing Telesforo's story with the world goes above and beyond company lines.
Back in October 2020, I was teaching a class at Texas A&M San Antonio University. And at that time, as you know, October is a Filipino American History Month. And I saw a video from the U.S. Navy about the heroic act of Telesforo Trinidad. How he saved 2 lives aboard USS Cruiser San Diego, despite of those several explosions. And here I am. I have already retired from the military. Since I was a young lieutenant from 1978 to 2008, I spearheaded a lot of Asian Pacific program. And to that date, Tess, I have not heard of Telesforo Trinidad. When I think of the Navy, in the U.S. Navy, because my adopted father was in the U.S. Navy, he was a steward. And I always thought of Filipinos being a steward or cook in the U.S. Navy.
Right.
So never in my mind that we already had a hero back in 1915.
Yeah.
So I said, had I known it, I would have pursued and educated the people that, hey, folks, don't just look at the Filipinos as cooks or stewards. In 1915, we had a sailor name of Trinidad who has received that. But I never learned that until 2020. With that thought in mind, Tess, with that thought in mind, I said, how can we form a groundswell and grassroots support to wake the American people and recognize this hero that we have forgotten for over 100 years? And when you have that groundswell support and grassroots support, writing the Secretary of the Navy to please name the ship, the support was just overwhelming. In fact, there was a time, Tess, when we approached the family in California that, hey, we're going to try to do this. I said, who are you that can make this happen?
Right.
But I'm the kind of leader or person that the more you challenge me, the more I get resilient and persistent. So we formed that nucleus to pass a resolution to say, name a ship, it's overdue, and so forth. So between all those organizations of Filipinos and veterans advocates and writing the congressman, after 1.5 years, in May 2022, the Secretary of the Navy made that announcement. We succeeded in naming the ship. Now let's form the USS Telesforo Commissioning Committee.
U.S. Navy Secretary Carlos del Toro officially announced in 2022 that a future Arleigh Burke-class destroyer would be named after Filipino sailor Telesforo Trinidad. Once the naming of the ship was accomplished, an all-star team known as the USS Telesforo Trinidad Commissioning Committee was formed, consisting of military veterans, business professionals, and community leaders. Their mission is to ensure the ship gets the recognition and honor it deserves. The responsibility of the committee is to raise awareness and financial funding to support every phase of the USS Telesforo Trinidad's building and beyond. From the start of fabrication at the end of 2025, to keel laying in 2026, to the christening ceremony in 2028, to the grand commissioning ceremony that will finally take place in 2031. Then, after all is said and done, the commissioning committee will continue to raise funds to provide additional support for things like scholarships and personal amenities for the ship's officers, crew, and their families.
This commissioning committee is very unique among other committees because normally the commissioning committees get active after the christening.
Right.
And now we've been...
You're there at the very beginning.
Oh my God. So we started really early on. We formed the board of directors. Now we form our executive committee.
Yeah.
I said, how are we going to make sure that whatever we do, we are in sync with the board committees? Whatever they do, when they tango, we're going to tango with them with grace.
Yes.
So I synchronized them. I said, we're not going to work in a vacuum here.
Right.
When that board committee works, here comes the committee that will support it totally.
Wow.
And then I want to put the right talent there. I want to always create a match strategy, no mismatch. Everything will match. We are very selective, Tess, because we're a bunch of strategies. I would military strategies.
Yes.
So we strategize like how we gonna, what do we need to touch the nerve of these people to make it happen? If we did not push the right button for Telesforo Trinidad, they were surprised when we were able to get it done in 1.5 years.
I was wondering about that.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
There's been many attempts to name a ship after Telesforo Trinidad.
Really? I didn't realize this was unprecedented because when I first heard that from Dan, I was like, what's all this like work that's happening? He's like, well, Tess, we have to raise money for this and this and this. And I was like, I had no idea that much work went into the naming of a ship.
I just know how to organize and makes things work. But you always have to give credit to the right folks, right? It's all about teamwork.
Leading the charge of the commissioning committee is one of the highest-ranking Filipino Americans in the U.S. Navy, retired Rear Admiral Victorino Mercado. I'm headed to Delano.
Oh.
You know about the grape strike history there with Larry Leong?
Oh, wow.
We met at the beautiful Navy Seabees Museum in Port Hueneme, California. As chairman of the board, Vic not only brings his sense of leadership, but his sense of duty to furthering the legacy of the USS Telesforo Trinidad. To him, naming this destroyer after a Filipino sailor serves as a pillar of inspiration for both the military and for generations of Filipinos who dream of becoming more than they ever thought was possible. That sense of leadership, that sense of responsibility, do you feel like that's a part of the reason why you've taken on this role as the chairman of the board for the commissioning of the Telesforo Trinidad?
I feel like over the years, I kind of missed opportunities where I should have got more involved.
Oh, wow.
Because like I said, as you get older, you realize that you're unique for some reason, for whatever reason.
Right.
And maybe it's just because really the Navy created the environment where, hey, I could do well, succeed.
Yeah.
But then you don't realize till late that you are a role model and you have a responsibility to give back. And this is a good way, I think, of doing it. And I tell you, I didn't take it on right away. I think when they asked me first, and there was a huge naming campaign. I mentioned earlier that this wasn't just a Filipino initiative. A group of Filipinos, the USS Telesforo Trinidad campaign, it was a labor of love. And then you just notice the groundswell, not only of Filipinos, veterans communities, but really all walks of life who served in the Navy, and they knew the quality of service of Filipino sailors.
Yeah.
So they all joined in a writing campaign, and success. You know, Carlos del Toro, Secretary of the Navy, did a wonderful thing. Now the mission changes, right? Because you want to get a ship named. For God's sake, it's the only Filipino sailor who has won the Medal of Honor. This is a no-brainer, and everybody understood that.
Yeah.
So now when the secretary did that, the next step was you needed really an organization to oversee every step in the process, to work with Huntington Ingalls and to work with the Navy. It's a support organization. They're going to bring the ship to life. The Navy's been doing that for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But, you know, to do that, I used to say, do it in a manner befitting the service of Telesforo Trinidad and the special relationship of Filipino Americans with the United States and the United States Navy. So this is how we can help that process. We wanted to make sure that this was done properly.
Yeah.
And so I had a good conversation with the Secretary of the Navy. It was wonderful. And I told him that I was planning on taking this on. And then I met with the Trinidad family.
You met them?
And
wow.
they were on a WebEx. And I got to see them all. And, you know, it's like it's a Filipino family of grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And it was just so nice to see them. Because a couple things I wanted to do before I accepted it. First, speak with the secretary and meet the family. And after I did that and I saw their passion, I was in. I just felt a little bit of responsibility to help and support the Navy to get this right, because it was special.
I had no idea that this journey that you have chosen to become, a part of is extending not even just to the celebrations, the key, aspects of the birthing of this ship, but also like after the fact as well. Like, I didn't realize that. So this is in a way going to be ongoing.
Most of the work will be done early if you set up.
Sure.
You have to raise sufficient funds. You set up, like we have a 501c3 nonprofit. Once the ship is commissioned, that is the milestone. Then, Navy has anchor scholarships or scholarships that are used for dependents. It's just setting that groundwork, getting through the major milestones, and then set up the ship for that success.
What do you feel that this commissioning of this ship, like, what is the meaning and the value to Filipinos, Filipino Americans?
He was awarded the Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Now, what's significant about that is there are only a few Medal of Honors that were issued during peacetime.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So most of the Medal of Honors are issued during time of war. This was 1915, before the U.S. entered World War I. So what that tells you is that heroism during peacetime is no different than heroism during wartime. So that symbol of service, recognizing that. And he is the only Filipino American of all the sailors that has served since, I guess, 1901, when President McKinley issued the executive order allowing the Navy to enlist sailors.
Yeah.
I mean, not quite 100, but the statistics are mind-boggling about how many Filipinos served in the United States Navy. That's why I said special. Only one was awarded the Medal of Honor. That was Telesforo Trinidad. We got to recognize that this is, while this is significant for the Filipino community, this is huge for the United States Navy and the United States. So we can't just sit there and be focused on ourselves as a community.
Right.
Like I said, it took, lots of support in Congress, bipartisan support.
Yeah.
It was not only Filipino sailors, but U.S., Chinese, you name it. Everybody banded together just because I think it was out of solidarity for Filipino sailors. I think that as we go through, we need to recognize that this is even bigger than just Filipinos. This is a celebration of the Filipino sailors' service in the United States Navy.
Yeah.
And it's not just for the Filipino community to celebrate, it's for the Navy to celebrate. So we're going to help do that.
Yeah.
We're going to get a lot of support from, again, not just Filipinos, but I think the whole community. I'm so happy with where we're at right now. We have a really solid board of directors.
Sounds
We've got
like it, yeah.
a great executive leadership team. We are getting organized, and the Navy has been so supportive. From the secretary all the way down to the program executive office for ships and Huntington Ingalls. So far, all my discussions have just been wonderful. And
Yeah.
I just got to remind people that it still is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and we have time. But so far, everybody's been so supportive, and I can't thank folks enough.
Yeah.
But we will be starting fundraising soon. In earnest. I think we have a solid foundation for moving forward. It's exciting.
The naming of the USS Telesforo Trinidad after a Filipino-American veteran shows us what it looks like to hear the call to share our stories and to choose to do something about it. If you'd like to learn more about how you can support and be involved in the commissioning of the USS Telesforo Trinidad, please visit telesforo.org.